Good evening. Actually, good afternoon. It's going to be a banger today. I tell you, lads. This one's going to be controversial. Except that nobody's going to see it, except for you, June. And maybe the kids. It's all for the kids. That's why I'm doing this. This one is the Bible. My honest review of the Bible. So, let me just double check the stream here. Make sure it's going. Then jump right in. All right. First, let me show you what I'm talking about here. This is my Bible. I don't know if you can see this. Okay. You can see it's a little hefty. And I have read the whole thing. Now, not the history part of it. I'm not going to claim to be a biblical historian or anything. If you're an apologist, hey, Jeff, if you're an apologist, you are probably not going to enjoy this particular opinion. Although it doesn't really necessarily contradict with the concept that the Bible is the actual Word of God. The way that I look at it is, sure, I mean, there's three different ways you can look at the Bible being the Word of God, right? You could be like, well, God came down with a pen and wrote the Bible. That's what you could say. Or you could say God came down and whispered into the ear of some guy who then wrote down the Bible. You could say that too. Or you could say God created the universe and man created the Bible. And I'm kind of in the latter group there. That is to say, maybe Jesus is the Son of God, and so are you. So this particular discussion isn't about religion in general. I've got another one for that. Maybe I'll link to that one on here. This one is about Christianity and the Bible in particular. So it covers Judaism to the extent that I'm familiar with that, and Christianity to the extent that I'm familiar with that. But actually, it's mostly centered around the Bible, which I read. And I want to tell you a little bit about how I came to that, because, you know, it's important in term for the perspective. So I wasn't always religious. I'm not super religious, as you can probably tell. I am pseudo-religious. I mean, actually, I'm very, people are going to eat this up, spiritual, right? I believe that the universe is alive. And, but there's a bunch of religions that are created by men, and Christianity is one of them. And so that's how I look at it. And that's not how I've always looked at it. And that's important too. But first, let me take that perspective and describe the Bible to you for a second, just in case you're one of the kids. People will tell you, well, they're going to tell you all kinds of stuff about the Bible. But one thing you do know, some things you do know, that book that I was just holding up, it was published and printed by men. No question about it. And they got it, they assembled it, of course, from books that have been kept somewhat together. And, well, all I'm trying to suggest is that this particular thing is just a guide. So we'll get into what it says in a minute. But suffice to say, it's not magic in and of itself. I know that's a weird thing to say, but what you have to realize is that most of the world is religious, like 90-something%, and they all believe in one or another version of God and reality. And so humans take the time to make up stories which are helpful as guides. But I wouldn't take them literally. That's not what I would do. You can if you want, but that's not what I would do. Now, like I said, I wasn't always in exactly this frame of mind. When I was really young, I was confused. I didn't know what was real and what wasn't. I remember a time when to me Santa Claus was as real as Jesus, right? They were two just sort of mythical figures, do-gooders who existed in some quasi-real existence. I never really fully believed in either of them. I thought they were both mythological figures. Obviously, come to find out, Santa Claus is very real. Jesus, on the other hand, you don't really know, right? But I remember when I found out, when somebody told me, oh, Jesus was born in 4 BC. I was like, wait, what do you mean born? Like, you mean it was an actual person there? Like, this isn't just part of the mythology here? And they were insistent upon it, or, whatever source it was. And I had people in my family who were very religious. Grandma, other grandma, mom. People went to parochial school, and they got to them early, and they fully believe in the outlines of all of this stuff. And you're welcome to do that if it helps you. But I'm going to suggest that it's something otherwise. I'm going to give you a secular perspective as much as I can. Now, they got to me early too, right? At some point, I mean, they got to me, and I'll tell you, like I said, when I was a kid, I didn't know what was the reality. And when you have elder people in your family insisting that something is real, Jesus was real. He walked on water. He did these miracles. He made the fish and the bread and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like, really? Like, is that what you really believe? And I'll tell you, I got to a point in late adolescence where I was like, this is all bullshit. And I went like full agnostic. I was like, I'm just gonna not believe any of this shit, right? And I went through my life for the next 20 or so years, basically like that. And it went pretty well. And then there was a time when I got divorced. Now, I'm Catholic, technically. And so for Catholics, divorce is a big deal. And it got me thinking about spirituality. And of course, my life changed considerably at that point. And I was suddenly in a completely different place without the love and affection and the camaraderie and even the companionships that I used to have. The relationships were all gone. I moved. I had to move. And so I turned inside to look around and see about the whole religion thing, right? Because over time I had become more and more religious. Since I sort of shut it out when I was, 17 or whatever, I slowly, just looking around, started to become more and more aware of, like I said, the life of the universe. And the older that I get, the more the universe seems to be alive and responsive. But that's a different analysis. At this time, I was getting divorced, and I was thinking seriously about religion again. We had started to go to church a little bit. And I thought, what I'm going to do? I am going to dive into this. I am going all in on Jesus. All in on Jesus, right? Not really. I didn't go Pentecostal or anything. But I got this Bible, right? I got this. Look at this thing. I could pick it up again, but it's hard to pick up, actually. It's so big. And I thought, man, I am going to delve into this, and I'm going to learn as much as I can. I'm going to read the whole freaking Bible. I've never read the whole thing before. I read snippets here and there, but I thought this is going to have the worldly wisdom, the earthly wisdom, the wisdom for the ages, right? Like we know this book is ancient. It's very old, and it's assembled by wise people who are very careful particular about how they put it together. At least that's the impression that you get, right? This is the most read book in the world as far as we know. At least was recent until recently. Maybe the Quran, who knows? But it's certainly one of them. And so you got to give it some respect. I was like, I'm leaning into it, right? I'm leaning in. So I got this Bible, honestly, with religion in mind. Like I was like, I wanted to feel the religion, right? I wanted it to speak to me. Okay? So I had all of the hope and expectation when I cracked this book. And I just started to read page by page by page. And here's what I discovered. First of all, disappointing. I mean, just on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give it like a 3, maybe a 2 as far as books go. I really expected there to be more guide and moralism and actual morality and ways to act and things like that. And not a lot of that's in there. A surprisingly tiny amount of moral activity is really in the Bible. It's much more random than you would anticipate for the Word of God. It's much more, well, I'm going to say like it was written by humans. And now I'm going to tell you why I think it was written and how in the various phases that it was written. All right. Now I'm going to assume that you guys know the story here. So I'm just going to bust right into it. Here's what happened. Some Jews busted out of Egypt. Okay? And at the time, Egypt was the biggest, probably, empire on earth, ever to that extent, right? It was huge and powerful. And you didn't just bust out, and yet they did. And now I know it says in the Bible, Moses went out and parted the Red Sea, and they crossed. But let's face it, what really happened, to the extent that this story can be believed at all, what really happened is Moses was most likely a fisherman, an astronomer. He knew about the tides. He knew that at a certain time of day or night, the water was just going to be just low enough for everybody to get across for like the time that it would take them to get across. And that's it. And that's what they did. And they escaped. And it was fantastic. And they were like, you know what? Write that shit down. Put that shit down. That was fantastic. They escaped. The slaves escaped from Egypt. Fantastic. Write it down. And they could write for some reason. And so they did. And you know what? They were like, you know what? Remember all that shit about the apple and nothingness and all that? Put that shit in there too. Put that shit in the book, right? Just sort of weave it in together there because that's all great shit too, right? That was their mythology going back before. So that's what they did. That's the first 3 books of the Bible, okay, which were written, I believe, in Greek. And basically, it just tells this story and this myth and these myths. That's it. It's these guys' escape story and their origin story for the universe. That's the first 3 books of the Bible. The next 2 books, Leviticus and Deuteronomy, are prepper books. And it seems pretty clear what happened is, after they had this first initial book of great things, somebody was like, you know what? We should put down in this book that we carry around everywhere, like the guide on how to build shit, right? Like cubits, 4 cubits this way, 6 cubits this way. We should write down how to build the altars and the houses and the clothes and what to eat and what not to eat and how to prepare that shit. And that's what they did. They wrote a couple of preppers' guides ancient prepper's guides. And they're like, put these books with the other books, keep them together. And they did. You see what's going on here? They're accumulating a sort of national library. And then every time something interesting happened, they would write a book about it and add that to the library. Your ass gets eaten by a whale and survives. Guess what? You're going to get a book written about it. It's going in the library. You walk through the lion's den and you don't get eaten. Everybody's like, son of a bitch. Put that shit in a book. Put it in the library. Right? Ezekiel. This is one of my favorites. I love Ezekiel. I mean, you got to listen to this, right? Ezekiel seems to me clearly to be an alien encounter, right? Listen to this. Behold, the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. A strong wind came out of the north, a great cloud, with fire infolding itself, and a brightness round about it. And out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures. They had the likeness of man, and every one had 4 faces, right? Like a square robot, basically. Everyone had 4 wings, like a propeller, rotor blades. And their feet were straight feet, like, I don't know, stands. And the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like the color of burnished brass. Yeah, I bet they did. and they had hands of a man under their wings. Their wings were joined to one another. They turned. Not when they went every one straight forward. I mean, it just reads like the guy is watching an alien encounter. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went beside them. A wheel within a wheel. What do you think that sounds like? It sounds like a gear. I mean, this is a machine. He says, a firmament was over them, was over him, and a voice above the firmament. I sat there astonished for 7 days. I bet he did. But anyway, that's the kind of thing that gets written down and put in the books. And then, of course, I mean, actually, before that, the kings got a hold of it. Every time, every king was like, you know what, I want a book about me. And so you've got, Samuel and Joshua and just everybody's got their book. And it's really like sort of an advertisement for their kingdom and how nice it was. But when you read some of them, they're just not what you would expect. I mean, Solomon was just not all that wise. It doesn't appear from the text anyway. So anyway, these books, obviously the Jewish kingdom was conquered for a short period of time and then reconstituted. But basically this library survived. Obviously the Dead Sea Scrolls, and what you have now is this thing we call the Old Testament, which is basically just a description of the Jews' history mixed in with their mythology. And you can see the evolution of the writing, the styles change. And in this particular book, I mean, this is the parallel Bible. It has 2 versions, a 1611 and an 1881 version. But you can even tell, just even with these translations, the writing itself is different as the time goes on. So, and of course, we know that historically the book was put together that way. So, anyway, that's basically the Old Testament. Not much to it, not as impressive as I would have liked, not as much advice as anyone. There's so many better books. We've really improved upon books a great deal since these. There's lots better prepper books than those 2. I mean, the mythology is good, if you like that. But I mean, the poetry is crap. Now look, it's probably good in its own language, because poetry doesn't translate. It never translates. It can't. The whole point of it is it's sort of endemic to the language that it was written in. And the Psalms, God, they're they're crap in this English, in these translations. But like I said, I'm sure they were beautiful to begin with. But let's go on to the New Testament. Now, this is going to get me in trouble with the Catholics. In fact, all the Christians. Because I'm going to give an interpretation here that you probably haven't heard before. And it's not particularly glowing as a review of Jesus and the apostles. But this is just my read of the New Testament, and I'm just shooting it straight with you. So here we go. The New Testament starts off with 3 more or less identical stories of Jesus and how he got to where he is and what he's doing. And then, when you read through the New Testament, story after story in the New Testament, they read like advertisements. That's what they read like, advertisements. And when I think about how they supposedly came to be and what their purposes were, that makes a lot of sense. Because from my perspective, the New Testament guys were probably a bunch of grifters. Now, they may have had good hearts. They may have been trying to spread the joy and the love that we all associate with Christianity today. But it does appear that they were doing it for the cash as well. Now, look, I don't fault them for that. I mean, it was a good business. But that's really what it looks like it was. From every perspective. Now, that's most of the books of the New Testament. We'll get to the last book in a minute. But generally speaking, when you read the New Testament and you think about Christ's life, this is the impression that I got. Imagine the world that Christ was born into in the year that he was born into it. We're talking about a Pax Romana situation where the Roman Empire stretches across all of these formerly disparate lands made up of people from different tribes. And for the first time, maybe ever, in these regions, you could probably walk or travel between places where you could not have ever before for fear of being just slaughtered by the locals. But since the Romans were now in charge, there was probably a huge amount of travel that was never possible before. And it seems to me like Christ was a guy who made his way around in this area. And the origins of his story sound very much like he is, I'm going to say, a bit of a hypnotist. It sounds like he is a very good speaker, and he's influential, and he's able to establish rapport with people quickly. And he does this with the beggars at first, which is, they're the easiest ones to talk to. They want to talk to you, right? So he heals a particular beggar or beggars or group thereof, and they start following him around. And you can imagine this happening just simply by the fact of him hypnotizing them and talking them into feeling better, basically, right? You can imagine a guy walking up upon a group of beggars and seeing one in some particularly bad psychological pain, talking to him about it and talking him through the whole situation. Maybe he talked him off of drugs or something like that. But for whatever reason, they started following him around because of that, because of whatever he was saying. Now, at first, he didn't like it. It doesn't appear. At first, he was trying to get rid of him. But then I think he saw the power in having some followers. Now, if you think about it for a second, if you walk into a city with a group of people back in this time, and y'all are just walking on into the city, some people are going to come out and look at you. They're going to come out and greet you. Now, a clever hypnotist will realize that these are potential new followers, mostly. And what you do, they're the interested ones, right? So what you do is you engage them. You start to establish that same rapport. And the Bible is full of stories of Jesus doing this, walking up to people and establishing the rapport and getting them to follow him. I mean, there's stories of him walking up to a guy who's fishing. He's got the net, the boat, everything. And he talks the guy into just dropping everything and not even going home and telling his wife, just come with me, just follow me. Just leave all your shit here. Don't even go home and tell your wife, follow me. Now, maybe the guy's life was horrible. Maybe his wife was a bitch. Who knows? Or maybe Jesus was just gathering up people, right? Because the larger flock you have, the more attention you attract when you walk into a new town. So it's like having a little church, right? And I think Jesus figured this out. I think he figured out that what he could do is walk into any place with this group, the growing group of people. And any of the rich people who stick their heads out of the windows, you start shaming them immediately into providing your flock with sustenance. And of course, you do pretty well because they're giving you the good stuff. And it just snowballs from there. And Jesus starts to accumulate money. And so do the apostles. Now, not right away, but basically this is how it happens. He keeps walking around and keeps getting money from more and more and more people. And he starts preaching. Hey, you can give your money to me. Now, there's not a lot of money in those days. So what do you think happens? People look around and they're like, hey, you know what? I'm paying this taxes to the Romans. And fuck those guys, right? I could just give that money to Jesus and he tells me all these nice things. Now, he may have established the church by then to the extent that what you do is you have a place where people can go to and get food and water and or wine and have a little community about yourselves. And that may have been missing at the time because of the whole Pax Romana thing. People probably in some ways trying to reject the existence and the control of the Romans. And so they would probably try to reform their little groups. And the church facilitates that. So what a great situation, except people's money keeps going to the Romans. So what do? You tell them, hey, you can pay the church first. Don't worry about paying the Romans. You pay the church first. Well, guess what? That pissed off the Romans because everybody's got to pay taxes. And the Romans were like, you know what? Fuck you, man. Can't say that shit. Don't do it. And they would arrest him periodically, throw him in jail for a little while, beat him, and then let him go with the threat of don't do it again. And he kept doing it. The last time, they actually asked the people. It's in the Bible. They polled the people. Who do you want us to kill? There's a couple of people there that they're thinking about killing. There's Jesus and some other guy. And they're like, you want us to kill Barnabas or whatever his name is? Or you want us to kill Jesus? And everybody's like, Jesus, kill fucking Jesus. And, you can almost imagine people like wives of followers that Jesus collected while they were doing their housework or whatever, being down there like, who is this guy gathering all these people together? What is he doing? And how does that help us? Kill that guy because he's just disrupting the whole Roman system. And so they did. And that's really just what it looks like. And it looks like the apostles at that point were like, you know what? We're not letting this shit go at all. Fuck that. Everybody's all in on this. And that's when they really doubled down on the stories. The stories came out later that are in the New Testament. And it looks as though they were doing things like appealing to the Romans for leniency, and basically they're still pushing the issue. And obviously they were very successful with it. Now, the apostles themselves, like Jesus, were grabbed and beaten regularly, and they were pretty much all suffered horrible deaths. I'm pretty sure. You can go look that up, but it didn't end very well for them. I don't think that they managed their wealth and their followers exceptionally well. But the thing took off, obviously, and it wasn't until 8 centuries later that there's a counter revolution, that being Islam, of the people. And so it grew and grew and grew for a while. And anyway, it is today still the same kind of thing. That is, you can go, you can't get food anymore, but they give you a cracker, right? You can't get wine, but you can get grape juice. I mean, it's not sustenance anymore. It was probably like a party back in the days. Like, hey, come over, we'll get you some food, And Jesus probably got enough stuff from the people that he solicited to feed everybody and also pay for him. And today, obviously, the church is still very rich, not as powerful anymore. People have sort of stepped in, and power base has shifted. But that's what it is. So anyway, that is the Bible. Old Testament, New Testament. Wasn't what I expected it to be. But that's my honest interpretation. So, like I said, you can have your own opinion. Let's see. I've already done the review of the Quran, but I'll do some other religious texts as well, and I'll link to that stuff. So, all right, that's it.